In the vast darkness between stars, where civilizations rise and fall like whispers in the cosmic wind, there exists a universal truth that every species learns too late. Never send a distress signal into the void unless you're prepared for what might answer. The Galactic Council had rules about this. Protocols. Safeguards. They had carefully cataloged every known species, their capabilities, their territories, their nature. They knew which races would respond with aid, which would demand payment, and which would simply ignore the call entirely. But they had never encountered humanity. When the desperate plea echoed across subspace frequencies, a dying civilization's final gambit against extinction, the Council expected their usual responders. The peaceful Zelthani with their medical ships, the calculating Vorthak with their trade agreements, perhaps even a militant Kresh if the price was right. Instead, something else stirred in the darkness. Something from a world so hostile that most species couldn't survive a single day on its surface. Something that had clawed its way up from the primordial soup of a planet that tried to kill them every moment of every day for millions of years. The humans called their world Earth, though the rest of the galaxy knew it by another name entirely, Hell. And when the Deathworlders answered the call, everything changed. Commander Zura Keleth of the Meridian Research Station pressed her palm against the cold metal of the communications console, her breath forming small clouds in the rapidly cooling air. The life support systems were failing, just like everything else on the station. Around her, the skeletal crew of 37 researchers and technicians worked frantically at their posts, trying to squeeze every last second of functionality from their dying equipment. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief scientist, looked up from his workstation with grim eyes. "The Devourers will reach us in 18 hours. Our defensive systems are completely offline, and the evacuation pods were destroyed in the first wave of attacks." The Devourers. Even the name sent chills through the galaxy. An ancient race of cybernetic beings that consumed entire civilizations, stripping planets bare of all organic and technological resources. They moved like a plague through space, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. No one knew where they came from or what drove them, only that they were unstoppable. "What about the distress signal?" Zara asked, turning to Lieutenant Shun at the communications station. "Still broadcasting on all emergency frequencies," Chen replied, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. "The Galactic Council received it 6 hours ago, but their nearest fleet is 48 hours away. Too far to help us." Zara nodded grimly. She had expected as much. The Meridian Research Station was positioned at the very edge of known space, studying ancient artifacts from a long-dead civilization. It was valuable work, but it had also placed them beyond the reach of immediate rescue when the Devourers emerged from the dark between stars. The station shuddered as another piece of debris struck the hull. The Devourers had been toying with them for the past day, sending small scout ships to probe their defenses. They seemed to take pleasure in the hunt, allowing their prey to tire themselves out before moving in for the kill. "Ma'am," Chen called out suddenly, his voice tight with confusion. "I'm picking up a response to our distress signal." Zara hurried over to the communications console. "The Council fleet?" "No, ma'am. This is different. The signal is coming from a ship, but I can't identify the configuration. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases." Dr. Webb joined them, adjusting his glasses as he peered at the readouts. "The drive emissions are extraordinary. Whatever it is, it's moving fast. Very fast." "How fast?" Zara asked. Webb's face paled. "If these readings are correct, they'll be here in less than 3 hours. That's impossible. Nothing moves that quickly through subspace." The communications console crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged was unlike anything they had heard before, deep, confident, and speaking an accented galactic standard that sounded like it belonged to a predator. "Meridian Research Station, this is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the UES Defiant. We receive your distress call. What's your situation?" Zara exchanged glances with her crew before activating the transmitter. "Captain Mitchell, this is Commander Keleth. We're under attack by Devourer forces. Our defenses are down, life support is failing, and we have 37 souls aboard. The attackers will reach us in approximately 17 hours. There was a brief pause before the response came. Copy that, Commander. We're en route to your position. Estimate arrival in 2 hours and 43 minutes. Hantai. Captain, I should warn you, Zara added quickly. These are Devourers. Their technology is far advanced, and they've destroyed everything that's tried to stand against them. A single ship won't be enough. Another pause, longer this time. Then, impossibly, the sound of laughter came through the transmission. Commander, you obviously haven't met humans before. We specialize in impossible situations. Mitchell out. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Dr. Webb was the first to speak. Humans. I've never heard of that species. Have we cataloged them? Lieutenant Shun was already running searches through their databases. Nothing, sir. No record of humans anywhere in Galactic Council files. What kind of ship moves that fast? Zara wondered aloud. And what kind of captain laughs when warned about Devourers? Before anyone could answer, the station shook again, more violently this time. The lights flickered, and several consoles sparked and went dark. They're moving closer, Webb reported from the sensor station. The scout ships are pulling back, but there's something massive following behind them. I'm reading, dear gods, it's enormous. 20 times the size of our station. Through the observation deck's reinforced windows, they could see the Devourer mothership as it emerged from the shadow of a nearby asteroid. It was a nightmarish construct of twisted metal and organic components, pulsing with sickly green light. Smaller ships swarmed around it like insects, each one larger than the research station's defensive fighters had been. Life support down to 60%, someone called out. Hull breach on Deck 7, another voice reported. Zara watched the approaching death and tried to maintain her composure. In the distance, space seemed to shimmer and bend as something massive dropped out of subspace. The readings were incredible. The new arrival was moving so fast, it created visible distortions in space-time. My God, Chen whispered, staring at his instruments. That ship, it's accelerating directly toward the Devourer fleet. The human vessel was sleek and angular, nothing like the organic curves favored by most galactic races or the brutal efficiency of Devourer ships. It was dark gray, almost black, and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Despite being significantly smaller than the Devourer mothership, something about it radiated menace. The communications console crackled again. Meridian Station, this is Captain Mitchell. We're moving to engage. Recommend you take cover and prepare for some rough riding. Captain, Zara transmitted back urgently. That's a Devourer mothership. Your single vessel cannot possibly. Commander, the human captain interrupted, and there was something in her voice that made Zara fall silent. I appreciate the concern, but you need to understand something about humans. We don't back down from a fight, especially when innocent lives are at stake. Watch and learn. The human ship began to change as they watched. Weapon ports opened along its hull like eyes blinking awake. Energy began to build around the vessel, creating an aura of barely contained power that made the air itself seem to hum with anticipation. The energy readings are off the charts, Webb reported, his voice filled with awe. Whatever they're powering up, it's drawing more energy than our entire station uses in a month. The Devourer fleet had noticed the human ship now. The smaller vessels turned to face the newcomer, their own weapons beginning to charge with that characteristic green glow. The mothership itself seemed to pause in its approach to the research station, as if reassessing this unexpected development. Then, the humans opened fire. The weapons that emerged from a human ship were unlike anything in the Galactic Council's arsenal. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they launched what appeared to be solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic impact alone was devastating, but that wasn't the worst part. Each projectile contained something that the horrified Devourer crews discovered too late. Nuclear warheads. The first Devourer scout ship simply vanished in a sphere of nuclear fire. The second and third followed moments later as the human vessel's weapons systems tracked and eliminated multiple targets simultaneously. The mothership's shields flared as several projectiles struck home, the atomic detonations creating brilliant flowers of destruction against its hull. "Impossible," Webb whispered, gripping the sensor console so hard his knuckles turned white. "They're using atomic weapons. In space combat. Who does that?" Through the observation windows, they watched as the human ship moved through the Devourer fleet like a shark among minnows. It was fast, far faster than anything that size should be able to move, and its weapons seemed to have unlimited ammunition. Every shot found its target. Every target was destroyed. The Devourer mothership began to return fire, its massive energy weapons lancing out across space. The beams were powerful enough to crack planets, but somehow the human ship avoided them. It moved in patterns that defied logic, seeming to anticipate where the attacks would be before they were fired. "Their pilot is insane," Chen muttered, watching the display in fascination and horror. "They're flying directly through the weapon's fire." But it wasn't insanity, Zara realized. It was something else entirely. The human ship moved with a precision that suggested its pilot understood something about combat that the rest of the galaxy had missed. Every maneuver served a purpose. Every attack was calculated for maximum effect. The tide of battle turned quickly. Within 15 minutes of engagement, the human ship had destroyed or disabled 2/3 of the Devourer fleet. The mothership itself was listing heavily, its organic hull sections ruptured and bleeding atmosphere into space. Several more scout ships had fled, vanishing into subspace rather than face the human weapons. The communications console activated again. "Meridian Station, this is Captain Mitchell. Immediate threat neutralized. We're boarding the mothership to ensure it won't be calling for reinforcements. Stand by." "Captain, wait," Zara called out. "Boarding a Devourer ship is suicide. Their internal defenses are designed to kill any organic life that enters." The response came back with what sounded suspiciously like amusement. "Commander, I appreciate the warning, but humans have been dealing with things that want to kill us for a very long time. We've gotten pretty good at it." Through their telescopes, they watched as a small craft detached from the human ship and approached the crippled mothership. It attached itself to the hull like a parasite, and then something began cutting through the Devourer vessel's armor with surgical precision. The battle inside the mothership was invisible to them, but they could track its progress by the explosions and energy discharges that erupted from various sections of the massive vessel. Whatever the humans were doing in there, it was thorough and devastating. After an hour, the small craft detached and returned to the human ship. Moments later, the Devourer mothership exploded from the inside out, its twisted hull sections spinning away into the void. The few remaining scout ships that had been lurking at the edge of sensor range immediately fled, their subspace drives tearing holes in reality as they escaped. The human ship approached the research station slowly, its weapons powered down, but still radiating that sense of barely contained lethality. Captain Mitchell's voice came through the communications system again, calmer now, but still carrying that underlying edge of danger. "Meridian Station, this is the Defiant. Area is secure. We're detecting critical system failures on your station. Do you require emergency assistance?" Zara found her voice after a moment. "Yes, Captain. Our life support and hull integrity are both failing. We have wounded crew members and limited medical supplies." "Understood. We're sending over repair teams and medical personnel. Fair warning, Commander, humans might look a bit different from what you're used to. Try not to be alarmed." Before Zara could ask what that meant, she heard the distinctive sound of an airlock cycling. The human ship had apparently docked with their station without her even noticing. The efficiency was unsettling. The first human through the airlock was tall, easily 2 meters in height, with pale skin and short brown hair. She wore a uniform that looked both practical and intimidating, with armor plating integrated into the fabric. Her eyes were a startling blue color that seemed to take in everything at once. "Commander Kelleth? I'm Captain Sarah Mitchell." The human woman extended her hand in what was apparently a greeting gesture. When Zara took it, she was surprised by the strength of the grip and the warmth of the human skin. Behind Captain Mitchell came more humans, carrying equipment and supplies. They moved with a fluid efficiency that reminded Zara uncomfortably of predators on the hunt. Their technology was unlike anything she had seen. Compact, powerful, and designed with an aesthetic that prioritized function over form. "You're from Earth," Zara said, not quite making it a question. Mitchell nodded. "That's right, though most of the galaxy calls it something else, from what I understand." "What do they call it?" The human captain's smile was sharp and filled with pride. "They call it a death world, Commander, and they're not wrong." As the human repair teams spread throughout the station, working with impossible speed and skill to restore critical systems, Zara began to understand what they had stumbled into. These weren't just another spacefaring race. These were apex predators from a world so hostile that it had forged them into something the galaxy had never seen before. And they had just announced their presence to the universe by destroying a devourer fleet without breaking a sweat. The implications were staggering. The repair work proceeded with an efficiency that left the research station's crew speechless. Within 6 hours, the humans had not only restored life support and hull integrity, but had actually improved several systems beyond their original specifications. Dr. Webb found himself following one of the human technicians around like a fascinated child, asking endless questions about their technology. "The power coupling efficiency is remarkable," Webb said, watching as the human engineer, who had introduced himself as Rodriguez, rewired a critical junction with tools that seemed to reshape metal at the molecular level. "Our best systems operate at 73% efficiency. This modification you've made is showing 94%. Rodriguez looked up from his work, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yeah, we've had to get creative with power management. When you're dealing with gravity wells that can crush a ship and radiation that can cook you in minutes, you learn to squeeze every erg out of your systems." "Gravity wells that can crush a ship?" Webb's eyes widened. "What kind of environment are you from?" "Earth," Rodriguez replied simply, as if that explained everything. "Our home star puts out solar flares that would sterilize most worlds. We've got magnetic field fluctuations that can interfere with electronics, weather patterns that can level cities, and that's on a good day." Webb was scribbling notes frantically. "How do you survive such conditions?" Rodriguez paused his work and looked at the smaller alien scientist with something approaching sympathy. "Doc, surviving isn't the hard part. It's thriving that takes effort. Humans don't just adapt to hostile environments. We make them work for us." Meanwhile, in the station's medical bay, Dr. Yates was experiencing her own form of culture shock. The human medical team had brought their own equipment, and their approach to healing was unlike anything in her experience. Where Galactic Council medicine focused on careful, gentle treatment, human medicine was aggressive and decisive. "The bone fractures in patient 7 are quite severe," Dr. Yates observed, watching as the human medic, Dr. Lisa Park, examined one of the injured researchers. "Our protocols would require weeks of careful bone regeneration therapy." Dr. Park held up a device that looked more like a tool than a medical instrument. "We'll have him walking in 6 hours. Humans heal fast, but we've also learned to help the process along." She activated the device, and Dr. Yates watched in amazement as the patient's broken ribs began to knit themselves back together at a visibly accelerated rate. The process looked painful, but the human medicine seemed designed to push through pain rather than eliminate it. "Your species has remarkable pain tolerance," Dr. Yates observed. "We've had to develop it," Dr. Park replied matter-of-factly. "Earth doesn't coddle its children. If you can't handle pain, you don't survive long enough to reproduce." The comment sent a chill through Dr. Yates. She was beginning to understand that humans weren't just technologically advanced. They were fundamentally different from every other sapient species on a biological level. On the bridge, Commander Kelleth was getting her own education in human capabilities. Captain Mitchell had remained aboard the research station to oversee the repairs, and her presence was both reassuring and unsettling. The human woman radiated confidence and competence, but there was something predatory about the way she moved and observed her surroundings. "Your ship," Kelleth said, gesturing toward the view screen where the UES Defiant hung in space like a dormant weapon. "It's designed for war." Mitchell followed her gaze and nodded. "Every human ship is designed for war, Commander. We learned early that the universe isn't a safe place. But surely your species has known peace. You must have explorers, scientists, diplomats." "We do," Mitchell agreed. "But even our exploration ships are armed. Even our science vessels carry weapons. Even our diplomats are trained to fight." She turned to face Kelleth directly. "You have to understand, Commander, humans spent millions of years fighting for survival on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. We didn't develop cooperation because we were peaceful. We developed it because it made us more efficient predators." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Lieutenant Chun, who had been monitoring communications traffic, suddenly looked up from his station with alarm. "Commander, I'm detecting multiple subspace transmissions. The Galactic Council is requesting immediate communication." Kelleth activated the long-range communications array. The holographic projection that materialized showed 3 council members: a tall, crystalline Zelthani, a multi-armed Vorthak, and a heavily armored Kresh war chief. Their expressions ranged from concern to outright hostility. "Commander Kelleth," the Zelthani spoke first, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We received your distress signal and have dispatched a rescue fleet. However, we are now detecting unknown weapon signatures and the complete destruction of the Devourer force. Please explain." Before Kelleth could respond, Captain Mitchell stepped into the projection field. The reaction from the council members was immediate and pronounced. The Zelthani's crystalline structure darkened. The Vorthak's arms moved to defensive positions, and the Kresh warchief's armor plating shifted to combat configuration. "I am Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Human Colonial Navy," Mitchell said calmly. "We responded to the distress call and eliminated the Devourer threat." The Kresh warchief leaned forward, his massive frame filling most of the projection. "Humans? There is no record of your species in council databases. What authority do you claim in this sector?" Mitchell's smile was sharp. "The authority of superior firepower and the willingness to use it in defense of innocent lives. The Devourers were a significant threat." The Vorthak interjected, its multiple arms gesticulating nervously. "Our intelligence indicated they possessed technology far advanced beyond council standards. How did a single unknown vessel destroy an entire fleet?" "By being human," Mitchell replied simply. The Zelthani structure pulsed with what Kelleth recognized as agitation. "We require a detailed report of your weapons capabilities and technology. The destruction of the Devourer fleet has created a significant power vacuum in this region." "I'm not in the habit of sharing military intelligence with strangers," Mitchell said, her tone cooling. "But I will say this: humans protect what is ours. And we consider innocent lives to be worth protecting, regardless of species or political affiliation." The Kresh warchief's armor plates shifted again, this time clearly into an aggressive configuration. "You speak of protection, but you bring unknown weapons into council space without authorization. This is an act of aggression." Mitchell's demeanor changed subtly, but Kelleth could feel the shift in atmosphere. The human captain suddenly seemed larger, more dangerous. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made everyone on the bridge take an unconscious step backward. "War Chief, let me be very clear about something. We didn't ask for council permission to save lives. We don't need council authorization to protect innocent people from genocidal machines. And we certainly don't require your approval to exist in this galaxy." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Humans have been dealing with bullies for a very long time. We've gotten quite good at discouraging them." The tension in the transmission was palpable. The 3 council members were clearly unused to being spoken to with such directness, especially by an unknown species. The Kresh Warchief's response was predictable. You dare threaten the Council? Our combined fleets could reduce your world to ash. Mitchell's laugh was genuinely amused, which somehow made it more unsettling than any threat could have been. Warchief, you clearly don't understand humans very well yet. Threatening our homeworld is like threatening a nest of angry hornets. You might succeed in destroying the nest, but the surviving hornets are going to make your life very, very unpleasant. Dr. Webb, who had been listening to the exchange from his workstation, looked up with sudden understanding. Captain, when you say humans have been fighting for survival for millions of years, are you saying your entire species evolved in a state of constant warfare? Mitchell nodded. Every human alive today is descended from survivors, Dr. Webb. We're the end result of millions of years of natural selection favoring intelligence, adaptability, cooperation, and controlled aggression. We don't fight because we're evil. We fight because it's literally bred into our bones. The implications of this revelation rippled through the research station's crew. They were dealing with a species that had been forged by evolutionary pressures that most galactic races couldn't even imagine. Where other species had developed civilization as an escape from their primitive nature, humans had developed civilization as a weapon. The Vorthack in the transmission seemed to grasp this concept faster than its colleagues. You are saying your species weaponized evolution itself. Nature weaponized evolution, Mitchell corrected. We just survived the process. The Zelthani's crystalline structure was now pulsing rapidly with what Keleth recognized as fear. What do humans want? Why have you revealed yourselves now? Mitchell's expression softened slightly. We want what every sapient species wants: to live, to grow, to explore, to learn. The difference is that we're prepared to fight for those things. And we're willing to help others fight for them too. In exchange for what? The Kresh Warchief demanded suspiciously. Nothing, Mitchell replied, and the simple honesty in her voice was somehow more intimidating than any threat. Humans help because it's the right thing to do. We protect because protection is necessary. We fight because fighting is sometimes the only way to preserve what's good in the universe. The council members exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their discomfort with this new player in galactic politics. The Vorthack finally spoke for all of them. This conversation is far from over. We will be in contact regarding humanity's emergence in the galactic community. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Captain Mitchell turned to Commander Keleth with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of that, Commander. Politics were never my strong suit. Keleth stared at the human woman with a mixture of awe and terror. Captain, what have you just done? You've essentially declared war on the Galactic Council. Mitchell shook her head. No, Commander. I've simply announced that humans exist. Whether that leads to war or peace depends entirely on how the Council chooses to respond. She paused, looking out at the wreckage of the Devourer fleet floating in space. But I will say this, humans are done hiding in the shadows. The galaxy is about to discover what it means to share space with a species that refuses to be prey. As if to emphasize her point, the UES Defiance weapons systems powered up briefly, sending a pulse of energy across all sensor frequencies. It was a demonstration, Keleth realized. A show of power designed to be detected by any ship within several light years. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and they were not going to be quiet about it. The research station's crew continued their work, but everyone was aware that they had just witnessed a historic moment. First contact with humanity wasn't going to be a peaceful exchange of knowledge and culture. It was going to be a declaration that the balance of power in the galaxy had fundamentally changed. And somewhere in the dark between stars, other human ships were receiving the signal from the Defiant and beginning to move toward the galactic core. The isolation was over. The hiding was done. The Deathworlders were coming home. 3 days after the Devourer incident, the Meridian Research Station had become the most heavily monitored location in known space. Ships from a dozen different council races lingered at the edge of the system, their sensors trained on both the station and the human vessel that remained docked to it. None of them approached within weapons range. a prudent decision given what they had all observed through long-range telemetry. Commander Kelleth found herself in the unique position of being the galaxy's foremost expert on human behavior, a qualification she felt entirely unprepared for. The flood of communications from various council worlds, research institutions, and military commands have been overwhelming. Everyone wanted to know about the humans. Everyone wanted to understand what they were dealing with. The problem was that the more she learned about humans, the more terrifying they became. "Captain Mitchell," she said, finding the human woman in the station's observation lounge, staring out at the gathered fleet of observer ships. "I've been reading through your technical specifications for the repair work your team has done. Some of these modifications shouldn't be possible with known physics." Mitchell turned away from the viewport, and Kelleth was struck again by how the human woman seemed to evaluate everything around her as either a threat or an asset. It was a predator's gaze, but one tempered by what appeared to be genuine concern for others. "Which modifications specifically?" Mitchell asked. "The gravitational stabilizers you installed in our main reactor. According to our physics models, the materials you used shouldn't be able to withstand the stresses you're subjecting them to." Mitchell smiled, and Kelleth was beginning to recognize that human smiles could mean many different things. This one seemed to indicate amusement mixed with pride. "Commander, humans have been working with impossible materials for centuries. When your homeworld regularly subjects you to gravitational anomalies, radiation storms, and atmospheric pressures that would crush most ships, you learn to build things that can handle stress." She gestured toward the viewport. "Those ships out there? They're built for the controlled environment of space. Human ships are built to survive re-entry through a corrosive atmosphere during a magnetic storm while under enemy fire." The casual way Mitchell described such conditions made Kelleth's blood run cold. "Your world regularly experiences those conditions?" "Earth is what galactic xenobiologists would classify as a Class 12 death world," Mitchell explained, settling into a chair that creaked under her weight. Even sitting, she somehow managed to look ready to spring into action. "Extreme weather, geological instability, aggressive biological life forms, high radiation levels, and frequent asteroid impacts. Most council races consider Class 4 worlds to be barely habitable." Dr. Webb approached their table, carrying a datapad covered in calculations and looking simultaneously excited and terrified. "Captain, I've been analyzing the combat footage from your engagement with the Devourers. Your weapon systems are using controlled nuclear fusion as a propulsion method for kinetic projectiles. The energy requirements alone should be impossible to manage on a ship that size." Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Good analysis, Doctor. Most species develop energy weapons because they're more efficient in terms of power consumption. Humans went the other route." "But why?" Webb asked, settling into his own chair. "The engineering challenges must have been enormous." "Because energy weapons can be defended against," Mitchell replied simply. "Shields, armor, electromagnetic fields. There are lots of ways to stop an energy beam. It's much harder to stop a chunk of dense metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed, especially when it explodes with the force of a small star on impact." Kelleth felt a chill run down her spine. "You weaponized stellar fusion?" "We weaponized everything," Mitchell said matter-of-factly. "Gravity, fusion, fission, electromagnetic fields, kinetic energy, chemical reactions, biological agents, quantum mechanics. If it exists in nature, humans have probably figured out how to turn it into a weapon." The observation lounge's communication system activated, interrupting their conversation. Lieutenant Chen's voice came through with barely controlled excitement. "Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting immediate conference with Captain Mitchell." Mitchell sighed and stood up, her movements fluid and controlled. "Showtime. Commander, would you mind joining me? I suspect they're going to want a witness to whatever they're about to propose." The holographic conference chamber that materialized in the research station's main communications bay was impressive even by galactic standards. Representatives from over 20 different council races were present, their forms creating a bizarre array of shapes, colors, and sizes. At the center of the gathering stood the three primary council leaders: Supreme Arbiter Thranks of the Zelthani, War Marshal Krogar of the Kresh, and Trade Speaker Yiliak of the Vorthak. Captain Mitchell entered the projection field with the casual confidence of someone walking into their own living room. Her human crew had gathered behind her, not at attention, but in a loose formation that somehow managed to look both relaxed and ready for combat. Kelleth recognized it as another example of humanity's seemingly contradictory nature. Council members, Mitchell said, offering a slight nod that could have been respect or acknowledgement. You requested this meeting. Supreme Arbiter Thranks' crystalline structure pulsed with formal authority. Captain Mitchell, the emergence of humanity in galactic space has created significant concerns among the Council races. We require clarification regarding your species' intentions and capabilities. I'm happy to answer reasonable questions, Mitchell replied. What specifically would you like to know? War Marshal Krogar stepped forward, his massive form radiating barely controlled aggression. Your technology. Where did you acquire weapons capable of destroying Devourer fleets? Mitchell's expression didn't change, but Kelleth noticed that the other humans in the room shifted almost imperceptibly. It was subtle, but their posture had become more alert, more dangerous. We built them, Mitchell said simply. Impossible Krogarsnaled. The Devourers possessed technology beyond Council capabilities. No single species could develop superior weapons independently. Mitchell's smile was sharp. War Marshal, you're making assumptions based on your own limitations. Humans develop technology differently than Council races. Trade Speaker Yiliak's multiple arms gestured in what Kelleth recognized as confusion. Explain this difference. Council races develop technology to make life easier, safer, more comfortable, Mitchell explained. Humans develop technology to survive. Everything we build has to work in the worst possible conditions, because on Earth, worst-case scenarios are Tuesday afternoon. A new voice entered the conversation. Dr. Zareth, the Council's chief xenobiologist, appeared in the projection as a flowing, tentacled mass of translucent blue. Captain Mitchell, we have obtained samples of your ship's hull plating from the debris of your boarding action on the Devourer vessel. The material properties are unprecedented. How so? Mitchell asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. The metal exhibits properties of multiple different elements simultaneously, Dr. Zareth continued. Our analysis indicates it should not be physically possible for matter to exist in the configuration you have achieved. Mitchell exchanged a glance with one of her crew members, a tall man with graying hair who had introduced himself as Chief Engineer Torres. Torres stepped forward with the air of someone about to deliver a lecture. Doctor, human metallurgy is based on necessity rather than convenience, Torres began. When your homeworld subjects your materials to temperatures ranging from absolute zero to several hundred degrees Celsius, pressures from near vacuum to crushing depths, and radiation levels that would sterilize most laboratory equipment, you learn to make alloys that can handle anything. But the quantum structure, Dr. Zareth began, is impossible according to known physics, Torres finished. Yes, we're aware. Humans have been breaking the laws of physics for so long that we've gotten quite good at it. The assembled council members erupted in what could only be described as organized chaos. Multiple species began talking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of confusion, fear, and outrage. Supreme Arbiter Thranks' crystalline structure flared with light as it attempted to restore order. This is unprecedented, the Arbiter declared. No species should possess technology that violates fundamental physical laws. Mitchell waited for the noise to die down before responding, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the agitation around her. Council members, let me ask you something. How many of your worlds have extinction-level events on a regular basis? The question caught them off guard. Trade Speaker Yiliak was the first to respond. The Vorthak homeworld experiences minor seismic activity approximately once every 50 standard years. The Kresh homeworld has never faced extinction-level threats, War Marshal Krogar added proudly. Earth has extinction-level events every few thousand years, Mitchell said quietly. Supervolcanic eruptions, Asteroid impacts, ice ages, gamma-ray bursts from nearby stellar events, magnetic pole reversals, massive solar flares. Our planet has been trying to kill everything on it for billions of years. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Humans didn't develop advanced technology because we wanted to explore the stars or increase our comfort. We developed it because if we didn't, we would all die. Every advancement we've made has been driven by the fundamental need to survive in a universe that wants us dead. Dr. Webb, who had been listening intently from his position near the communications console, suddenly looked up with understanding. That's why you break physical laws. You had to. Mitchell nodded approvingly. Exactly, Doctor. When conventional physics tells you that something is impossible, but you need that impossible thing to keep your species from going extinct, you find a way to make the impossible happen. The revelation sent another wave of unrest through the council representatives. Kelleth could see fear beginning to replace curiosity in many of their expressions. They were starting to understand that they weren't dealing with just another spacefaring race. They were dealing with a species that had spent millions of years in an arms race with their own planet. Supreme Arbiter Thranx's structure dimmed as it processed this information. You're saying that humanity has evolved to survive conditions that would destroy entire civilizations. Not just survive, Mitchell corrected. Thrive. Humans don't just endure hostile conditions. We make them work for us. We turn obstacles into advantages. We weaponize disadvantages. This conversation is becoming concerning. A new voice interjected. The speaker was Ambassador Frex of the Diplomatic Corps, a tall, slender being with pale skin and large eyes. Captain Mitchell, the Council must consider the implications of a species with your capabilities entering galactic society. The balance of power will remain exactly as it was. Mitchell interrupted, her voice carrying a note of steel. Humans are not interested in conquest or domination. We're interested in survival, exploration, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. War Marshal Krogar's armor plates shifted into an openly aggressive configuration. You expect us to simply accept your word? Your species appears overnight with impossible technology and claims to be peaceful. Mitchell's demeanor changed subtly, but the shift was enough to make Kelleth take an involuntary step backward. When the human captain spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. War Marshal, let me be very clear about something. If humans wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done so already. The fact that we're having this conversation instead of discussing surrender terms should tell you something about our intentions. The casual confidence of the statement sent chills through the assembled council members. It wasn't a threat. It was simply a statement of fact delivered with the certainty of someone discussing the weather. Chief Engineer Torres stepped forward to support his captain's statement. If I may add some context, the ship you see here is a light explorer vessel. It's designed for reconnaissance and first contact scenarios. Our actual military vessels are considerably more robust. The implication hung in the air like a physical presence. If this single ship had destroyed an entire Devourer fleet, what could humanity's actual military accomplish? Dr. Zaretha's tentacles writhed with what Kelleth recognized as scientific fascination overcoming fear. Captain Mitchell, would it be possible to arrange for our researchers to visit your homeworld? The scientific implications of your evolutionary development are absolutely not. Mitchell cut him off, her refusal so immediate and definitive that it brooked no argument. Earth is quarantined for the safety of visiting species. Our environmental conditions would kill most council races within hours of exposure. Surely with proper environmental suits, Dr. Zareth began. Doctor, Chief Engineer Torres interjected, our atmosphere contains approximately 21% oxygen. That's enough to cause acute oxygen toxicity in most species. Our gravity is nearly twice standard galactic norm. Our weather patterns include storms that generate electrical discharges capable of powering small cities. Our native wildlife includes creatures that hunt in packs and have been known to take down prey many times their size. He paused for effect, and those are the plants. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Trade speaker Yiliak found its voice. Your plant life is predatory. Mitchell's smile was genuinely amused now. Some of it. Earth doesn't believe in making survival easy for anyone. If you want to live on our world, you have to fight for every day. The council meeting was beginning to take on the atmosphere of a nightmare revelation. Each new piece of information about humanity painted a picture of a species so fundamentally different from galactic norms that peaceful coexistence seemed almost impossible. And yet, as Commander Kelleth watched the proceedings, she realized that the humans weren't trying to be intimidating. They were simply being honest about their nature and capabilities. The terror came from the implications of that honesty, not from any deliberate attempt at psychological warfare. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to share space with apex predators. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 6 hours after the disastrous First Contact meeting with humanity. Representatives from every major spacefaring civilization gathered in the grand amphitheater on Council Prime, their forms creating a sea of shapes and colors that normally represented unity and cooperation. Today, however, the atmosphere was thick with fear and suspicion. Supreme Arbiter Thranx's crystalline structure pulsed with barely controlled agitation as it called the session to order. Council members, we face an unprecedented situation. The emergence of humanity presents challenges that our existing protocols were never designed to address. In the research station's communications bay, Commander Kelleth watched the proceedings through a secure link. Captain Mitchell had been invited to observe, but not participate, a diplomatic courtesy that felt more like quarantine given the circumstances. They're scared, Mitchell observed, studying the body language and postures of the various alien representatives. I can't say I blame them. Captain, Kelleth said quietly, what did you expect would happen when you revealed your capabilities so dramatically? Mitchell was quiet for a moment before answering. Commander, humans have been preparing for first contact for centuries. We ran thousands of scenarios, considered every possible approach. But in the end, we decided that honesty was the only viable long-term strategy. Even if that honesty terrifies potential allies. Especially then, Mitchell replied. Fear built on lies and misconceptions leads to war. Fear built on truth leads to respect. On the main display, War Marshal Krogar had taken the floor, his massive form dominating the speaker's platform. Fellow council members, the evidence is clear. Humanity represents an existential threat to galactic stability. Their technology surpasses our own. Their military capabilities are unknown, but demonstrably superior, and their evolutionary background suggests an inherently aggressive nature. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the amphitheater. Several species representatives shifted into defensive postures that transcended biological differences, the universal body language of creatures feeling threatened. Ambassador Frex of the Diplomatic Corps rose to respond, their tall form swaying slightly. War Marshal Krogar raises valid concerns, but we must consider the humans' actions alongside their capabilities. They responded to a distress call, saved innocent lives, and have shown no aggressive intent toward Council worlds. Yet, Krogar snarled, they've shown no aggressive intent yet. But what happens when their interests conflict with ours? What happens when they decide that Council space belongs to them? Trade speaker Yiliak gestured with multiple arms for attention. The economic implications must also be considered. Human technology appears to violate known physical laws. If they choose to enter galactic markets, they could destabilize entire economic systems overnight. Dr. Zaretha's flowing form undulated with scientific excitement mixed with trepidation. From a research perspective, humanity represents the greatest discovery in galactic history. Their evolutionary development under extreme conditions has produced biological and technological adaptations that challenge our fundamental understanding of life itself. Which is precisely why they're dangerous, Krogar interrupted. They are, by definition, unpredictable. Captain Mitchell watched the debate with the patient attention of a predator observing prey, but Kelleth was beginning to recognize the subtle signs of human emotion. There was disappointment in the captain's eyes, and something that might have been sadness. "You hoped for a better reception," Keleth observed. "I hope for wisdom," Mitchell replied. "But I suppose fear is the more likely response." The debate on Council Prime continued for hours, with representatives falling into predictable camps. The military-oriented species, led by the Kresh, pushed for immediate containment or preemptive action. The diplomatic races advocated for careful engagement and negotiation. The scientific communities wanted unrestricted access to study human technology and biology. The commercial interests worried about economic disruption. Finally, Supreme Arbiter Thranks called for order and began outlining the Council's preliminary decision. After extensive deliberation, the Council has reached the following conclusions regarding humanity's emergence in galactic space. The amphitheater fell silent. In the research station, everyone gathered around the communications console to hear the verdict that would shape humanity's future in the galaxy. First, Thranks continued, humanity will be classified as a restricted species under Section 12 of the Galactic Accords. This designation is reserved for civilizations possessing technology or capabilities that pose potential existential threats to galactic stability. Captain Mitchell's expression didn't change, but Keleth noticed her hands clench briefly into fists before relaxing. Second, human vessels will be prohibited from entering Council space without explicit authorization and escort. Any unauthorized human presence will be considered an act of aggression subject to immediate military response. Third, the human homeworld of Earth will be declared a quarantine zone under the Dangerous Worlds Protocol. No Council vessel or personnel will attempt to approach or study the system without unanimous Council approval. Fourth, all human technology transfers, trade agreements, or scientific exchanges must be approved by the Council's Threat Assessment Committee. Unauthorized technology sharing will result in immediate sanctions. The list continued, each restriction more severe than the last. By the time Thranks finished reading, humanity had been effectively isolated from galactic society while simultaneously being treated as a potential military threat. When the transmission ended, the research station's bridge was silent except for the hum of life support systems. Captain Mitchell stood quietly for a long moment, her face unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent that made Keleth's skin crawl. "Well, that's unfortunate. Captain," Keleth said carefully, "what will humanity's response be?" Mitchell turned to face her, and for the first time since their meeting, Keleth saw something genuinely dangerous in the human woman's eyes. "Commander, the Council has just made a critical error in judgment. They've treated us as a threat, while simultaneously attempting to contain us. That's exactly backwards from how you deal with humans." "What do you mean?" "If you treat humans as a threat, we become one," Chief Engineer Torres said, joining the conversation. His usually friendly demeanor had been replaced by something harder, more focused. "If you try to contain us, we find ways around the containment. It's basic human nature." Dr. Webb looked up from his calculations with confusion. "But surely humanity will respect the Council's decision. The alternative is war, and no single species can fight the entire galaxy." The laughter that came from a human crew was genuinely amused, which somehow made it more unsettling than anger would have been. Captain Mitchell shook her head with what appeared to be sympathy. "Dr. Webb, you're still thinking like a Council race. You're assuming the humans play by the same rules as everyone else." She gestured toward the viewport where the observer ships still lingered at the edge of the system. "Those ships out there? They're thinking tactically. They're wondering how their weapons would perform against our hull plating, how their shields would handle our kinetic bombardments, how their logistics would support a sustained campaign." "And you're not thinking the same way?" Keleth asked. "No," Mitchell replied simply. "We're thinking strategically. We're wondering why the Council made decisions based on fear instead of facts, what underlying assumptions led to those decisions, and how to address the root causes rather than the symptoms." The distinction was subtle but important, Keleth realized. The Council was reacting to humanity's capabilities with military thinking, how to fight or contain them. Humans were analyzing the Council's motivations with strategic thinking, why they felt threatened, and how to address those concerns. Lieutenant Chin's voice cut through their discussion. Captain, I'm detecting multiple subspace transmissions. Encrypted military channels. Mitchell nodded, as if she had expected this development. They're mobilizing their fleets. How long until we have significant military assets in this system? Chun consulted his instruments. Based on the transmission vectors and known fleet positions, approximately 18 hours for the first wave. 72 hours for a full battle group. Time to leave, then Mitchell decided. Commander Kelleth, it's been an honor working with you and your crew. I'm sorry our first contact with the Council has created complications for your research. Kelleth felt a sudden surge of panic. You're leaving? What about the Council fleets? What if they try to detain you? Mitchell's smile was sharp and confident. Commander, humans have been running blockades since we first learned to sail. A few alien ships aren't going to change our travel plans. As if to emphasize the point, the UES Defiant began to undock from the research station. Through the observation windows, Kelleth could see the human vessel's hull reconfiguring itself, armor plates shifting, and weapons systems coming online. The transformation was subtle, but unmistakable. The ship was preparing for battle. Captain, Dr. Webb called out urgently. Our sensors are detecting massive energy buildups in your ship's drive systems. The power levels are unprecedented. We're charging for a long jump, Chief Engineer Torres explained. Earth is a long way from here, and we want to get there before anyone follows us. The statement sent chills through the research station's crew. They were talking about traveling to the human homeworld, a place the Council had just declared off-limits and quarantined as too dangerous for alien life. What happens now? Kelleth asked, dreading the answer. Captain Mitchell paused at the airlock, her expression thoughtful. Now, Commander, humanity goes home and has a very serious conversation about our place in the galaxy. The Council has made their position clear. They see us as a threat to be contained rather than potential allies to be welcomed. And if the Council changes its mind, then we'll reconsider our options, Mitchell replied diplomatically. But, understanding the Council's perspective, I suspect they're more likely to double down on their current course of action. The human captain sealed the airlock behind her, leaving the research station crew alone with a growing awareness that they had just witnessed something historic and terrible. First contact with humanity hadn't resulted in peaceful integration or mutual cooperation. It had resulted in fear, mistrust, and the very real possibility of war. Through the observation windows, they watched as the UES Defiant completed its departure preparations. The ship's hull was now radiating energy across multiple spectrums, creating visual distortions in space around it. When it finally activated its drive systems, the effect was unlike anything in Council records. Instead of the gradual acceleration into subspace that characterized normal faster-than-light travel, the human ship simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only a brief distortion in space-time that dissipated within seconds. How fast were they moving? Webb whispered, staring at his sensor readings. Fast, Chen replied, his voice filled with awe and terror. Faster than anything should be able to move. If these readings are correct, they just achieved instantaneous travel across interstellar distances. The implications were staggering. If humans could move their ships anywhere in the galaxy without warning or preparation time, then conventional military thinking became obsolete. Blockades were meaningless. Defensive positioning was irrelevant. Traditional warfare itself might be impossible. The Council fleets that were rushing toward the Meridian Research Station would arrive to find empty space, and a research crew with impossible stories about a species that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute limits. Somewhere in the dark between stars, Captain Mitchell and her crew were returning to Earth with news that would change everything. The galaxy had rejected humanity's peaceful emergence, choosing fear over cooperation. Now, they would discover what humans were capable of when cooperation was no longer an option. The age of isolation was ending, and What came next would depend entirely on how far the Council was willing to push a species that had spent millions of years learning how to survive impossible odds. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Commander Kella stood in the briefing room of the newly constructed Council Defense Station Meridian, watching holographic displays that showed the current state of galactic affairs. The transformation had been swift and decisive, like watching a carefully balanced ecosystem adapt to the introduction of an apex predator. The station itself was a marvel of combined Council engineering, massive, heavily armed, and positioned at what had been designated as the primary monitoring point for human activity. Ironically, it was also the most peaceful location in the galaxy, because humans had kept their word about not entering Council space without invitation. The problem was that they hadn't needed to. Status report. Admiral Vexer commanded as he entered the briefing room. The aging Kresh officer had been placed in charge of the Human Containment Initiative, a position that had proven to be far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Thale, a Zelthani intelligence analyst, began with the crisp efficiency that had made her species valuable in information warfare. Human activity has increased exponentially over the past 6 months, but their expansion has avoided all Council territories. She activated a three-dimensional map of the galaxy that showed territorial boundaries in different colors. Council space was represented in blue, with various member species' territories clearly marked. What caught Admiral Vexer's attention immediately was the growing network of gold markers that had appeared in previously unclaimed regions. They're expanding into the outer rim sectors, Vexer observed. Those regions were considered uninhabitable. Yes, sir, Thale confirmed. Humans appear to prefer worlds that we classify as death worlds or hazard zones. They've established colonies on 15 planets that our surveyors deemed too dangerous for settlement. Commander Kelleth studied the display with growing unease. What kind of dangerous? Radiation? Extreme weather? All of the above, Dr. Yin replied from his position at the science station. The Vorthack researcher had become the Council's leading expert on human capabilities through careful analysis of the Meridian incident. High radiation worlds, planets with corrosive atmospheres, systems with unstable stars, even worlds in active war zones. War zones. Vexer's attention sharpened. Explain. Dr. Yin manipulated the display to focus on a particular sector. The Chrono system was experiencing a three-way conflict between Pirate Confederation forces, Slaver Guild operations, and a Devourer remnant fleet. All three factions had established strongholds on different planets in the system. Had established? Kelleth asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Humans arrived 3 months ago, Thale reported. They eliminated all hostile forces within 2 weeks and established a colony on the most heavily contested planet. Our intelligence suggests they're now using the system as a training ground for their military forces. The casual way the Zelthani delivered this information belied its significance. Humans had entered a system that 3 different military forces couldn't control and had pacified it in a matter of weeks. What about the Devourer remnants? Vexer asked. Those are the same forces that destroyed the Helix colonies. Completely eliminated, Dr. Yin confirmed. Human forces appear to have studied Devourer technology extensively since the Meridian incident. They've developed specific countermeasures that are remarkably effective. Admiral Vexer studied the display with the growing realization that the Council's containment strategy had failed spectacularly. Instead of limiting human expansion, they had simply redirected it toward regions where Council forces couldn't interfere. Worse, humans were now operating in areas so dangerous that conventional military doctrine considered them impassable. What's our current intelligence on human military capabilities? He asked. Lieutenant Commander Thale's crystalline structure dimmed slightly with what Kelleth recognized as reluctance to deliver bad news. Sir, that's where the situation becomes problematic. Human military doctrine appears to be fundamentally different from our own. She modified the display to show recorded instances of human military action. Traditional Council warfare relies on large fleets engaging in decisive battles to control strategic locations. Human warfare appears to prioritize rapid deployment, overwhelming force application, and immediate withdrawal. Hit and run tactics? Vexer asked. More sophisticated than that, Dr. Yin interjected. They identify critical vulnerabilities in enemy positions, deploy precisely the minimum force necessary to exploit those vulnerabilities, and then vanish before enemy reinforcements can arrive. Their casualty rates are negligible, but their effectiveness is unprecedented. A new display showed the aftermath of human military actions. The images were unsettling, not because they showed massive destruction, but because they showed surgical precision that left everything except specific targets completely untouched. They're not trying to conquer territory, Keleth realized. They're solving problems. Exactly, Thale confirmed. Human forces appear to treat military action as an engineering challenge rather than a political statement. They identify what needs to be accomplished, determine the most efficient method to accomplish it, and then execute with minimal resource expenditure. Admiral Vexer was beginning to understand why the Council's military advisors were describing the human situation as an existential threat. It wasn't just that humans were more capable than expected, it was that they operated according to principles that made traditional military planning obsolete. What about their technology development? He asked. Dr. Yin activated another set of displays showing energy signatures and materials analysis. Human technology continues to advance at rates that challenge our understanding of research and development cycles. They appear to have established manufacturing facilities that produce materials we cannot identify and weapons systems that operate on principles we cannot duplicate. How is that possible? Vexer demanded. Technology development takes decades, sometimes centuries. Unless you're working with technology specifically designed to be rapidly adaptable, Dr. Yin replied. Human engineering appears to prioritize modularity and upgradability over specialization. They can modify existing systems for new purposes faster than we can develop entirely new systems. The implications were staggering. While the Council debated policy and allocated resources for traditional military expansion, humans were iterating through technological improvements at an exponential rate. Commander Keleth had remained silent during most of the briefing, but now she felt compelled to speak. Admiral, I think we're missing the most important aspect of the human situation. Vexer turned his attention to her. Which is? They're still not acting aggressively toward Council space, Keleth said. 6 months of rapid expansion, technological development, and military action, and they haven't made a single move against any Council world. They've avoided our territory completely. What's your point, Commander? My point is that they're keeping their word, Keleth replied firmly. Captain Mitchell said humans would respect our territorial boundaries unless we gave them a reason not to. So far, they've done exactly that. Lieutenant Commander Thale's structure pulsed with disagreement. But their expansion creates strategic vulnerabilities. They now control critical trade routes and resource-rich systems that we depend on for economic stability, which they haven't interfered with, Keleth pointed out. Human colonies have actually improved security in several sectors by eliminating pirate and slaver operations. Dr. Yin consulted his data displays. Commerce reports do indicate that trade efficiency has improved in human-controlled sectors. Their presence appears to have a stabilizing effect on regional security. Admiral Vexer processed this information with the growing awareness that the Council had created a strategic nightmare through their own actions. By treating humans as a threat, they had forced them to expand independently. By refusing diplomatic engagement, they had eliminated their ability to influence human development. By establishing military containment, they had demonstrated that they considered humans to be enemies. Sir, Thale reported suddenly, I'm detecting a priority transmission from Council Prime. The holographic display reconfigured to show the familiar form of Supreme Arbiter Thranx, but the crystalline being's usual controlled demeanor had been replaced by obvious agitation. Admiral Vexer, you are to cease all observation activities and return to Council Prime immediately. The situation with humanity has developed new complications. What kind of complications, Arbiter? Vexor asked. The kind that require immediate council intervention, Thranx replied grimly. 3 hours ago, human representatives contacted every major council world simultaneously. They've requested a formal diplomatic summit. The briefing room fell silent. After 6 months of complete isolation, humans were suddenly requesting direct contact with the council leadership. Were their terms? Vexor asked carefully. That's the problem, Thranx replied. They aren't requesting terms. They're offering them. Humans have prepared a comprehensive proposal for galactic cooperation that addresses every concern the Council raised during the initial contact incident. Commander Kelleth felt a chill run down her spine. They've been planning this from the beginning. Worse, Thranx continued. Their proposal includes detailed analyses of current galactic political tensions, resource distribution problems, and security threats. They're not asking to join the galactic community. They're offering to fix it. The implications hit everyone in the briefing room simultaneously. Humans hadn't been expanding randomly or reacting defensively to council policies. They had been systematically gathering information, developing capabilities, and positioning themselves to address galactic problems that the council either couldn't or wouldn't solve. What kind of problems are they offering to fix? Dr. Yin asked, though his tone suggested he was afraid of the answer. Everything, Thranx replied simply. The Devourer threat, pirate confederations, slaver guilds, resource shortages, territorial disputes, technological stagnation, and economic instability. They've prepared solutions for challenges that the Council has been struggling with for centuries. Admiral Vexor realized that the galaxy was facing a moment of fundamental change. The Council could accept human assistance and acknowledge that a single species had solved problems they couldn't handle. Or they could reject the proposal and admit that they considered their own pride more important than galactic security. Arbiter, he said carefully, what's the Council's initial response? Thranx's crystalline structure dimmed with what could only be described as exhaustion. Emergency session in 6 hours. Every Council member, every allied species, every independent world is being invited to participate. This isn't just first contact anymore, Admiral. This is a choice between cooperation and conflict on a scale the galaxy has never seen. The transmission ended, leaving the briefing room in stunned silence. Through the observation windows, the stars looked the same as they had that morning, but everyone present understood that the galaxy had just changed forever. Somewhere in the dark between those stars, humans were preparing to emerge from isolation not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as problem solvers offering solutions. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to accept help from a species that had spent 6 months proving they didn't need anyone's permission to reshape the balance of power. Commander Kelleth stared out at the stars and wondered if the Council understood that they were about to discover what humans were capable of when they stopped being patient. The Deathworlders had finished observing. Now, they were ready to participate, and participation, she suspected, was going to look very different from what anyone expected.